Join me, Jonesy, for interviews, recaps, and much more. So tune in, unwind, and get your sporting fix. Welcome everyone to the Sporting Fix, episode 20, the show where we dive into the world of sport, particularly targeted at the AFL. Obviously, it's what we'll be doing today. I am your host, Noah Jones. Before we start, be sure to follow us on Spotify. Hopefully you've already done that, and give us a follow on Instagram for all the latest content associated with the Sporting Fix. As I said, this is the 20th episode of the program, and I'm happy to dive straight into it, where we discuss the recapping, controversial comments made throughout the week, and Jonesy's tips for the next round, which will be a good one, by the way, Sir Doug Nicholls round, obviously. But before we start this podcast, I just want to pay my respects to the McCarthy family. Cam McCarthy passing away aged 29, which is heartbreaking for Fremantle, heartbreaking for his family, and really Earth in general. He seemed like a great guy. So many people said positive things about him, and for him to leave this planet too early is heartbreaking. So I wish him and his family, I pay my respects to them. They're a tough time. Recapping, let's move from a negative note to a positive note. It was a positive note for the Gold Coast Suns against the Cats, winning by 10 goals at 64 points against a team that was playing good footy up until then. I mean, it was in Darwin, and the Suns win in Darwin anyway. It's a fortress for them down there. 30-degree heat. It is sweltering up there in the north, and it was tricky for Geelong. You know, the ball was slippery, it's sweat, it's hotty, it's just everything you don't want as a footy player, and especially from a location down in Geelong where it is cold over winter. But that makes it 3 losses in a row. So that's 64 points, an absolute thrashing. Yeah, they didn't have their great players in. They had a few outs, but 64 points. If you want to be a good team, if you want to be a successful team that wants to go all the way, you got to beat teams like the Suns with a depleted team yourself, which they didn't do. On a good note for the Suns, star players Noah Anderson got 42 disposals and 2 goals. Flanders 37 disposals at 84% efficiency. Bailey Humphrey with 5 goals. I mean, there are positives everywhere for the Suns. That's just to name a couple. So a 64-point win gets them into the top 8. And a pretty good fixture for them moving forward. You'd hope that Dimmer can lead his team to finals bound come September. It's just about whether they'll be able to do that. If they keep playing like that, they will. But there's no more games for them in Darwin, which is a little bit concerning for them. They obviously do play well in Heritage Bank, or People's First Stadium, I should say, rather than any other ground. But Darwin was their fortress, which they will no longer play in 2024. But it's a victory to the Suns, a big one, which puts them into the top 8, which is important to come the bye rounds in the future and the middle of the year. Now, the next game I'm moving to, so I'm only recapping a few, but a bit more than last week at least. So the Pies and the Crows, this was a very, very good game. And it seems to be like an annual event where the Crows play the Pies and they lose by within a goal. So today, or not today, but on the weekend when they played in Melbourne, the Pies won by 4 points. And they are now the ones to beat, in my opinion. Sydney are first, obviously playing a beautiful brand of football, but the Pies are on a roll. They've started to hit their straps. They are winning games. They are the one to beat. And it doesn't seem like it at first. They had a terrible start, but they're coming good now. Craig McRae has got his troops in line, and they are winning games left, right and centre, and they will probably be doing the same next round and into the future as well. There's always controversy associated with close games, and obviously there was one with this particular game, and it always seems to be the Crows the ones affected. Isaac Rankin running too far, which was the right call in the end. He ran about 20 metres plus. It was the right call in the end, but in the heat of the moment, it was a very good decision, a tough one, and the Crows, again, on the receiving end of a decision not going their way. This victory to the Pies, this 4-point victory, the close finish Kings moved to 5th. Now on the AFL ladder, they are narrowing in on that top 4, and they are going to ensure they get to top 4 by the end of the season with the way they're going now. If they keep that form up, everyone playing well, like Nick Dacos, who got 42 disposals and 2 goals, they will find themselves in the top 4 come September. Isaac Rankin, I should say, my bad, is a rare find for the Crows. If there's a positive to take out of that game, which there were a few, obviously nearly beating Collingwood in Melbourne is a tough task, and they did that. But Isaac Rankin is a gem in the midfield. He obviously wins the footy, but his speed, his acceleration, his agility, no one else in the competition has something like his. We saw a lot of highlights from his game, but I think he evaded about 5 Collingwood supporters. Oh my goodness, 5 Collingwood players, I should say, and sprinted off to the races. But it's just the explosive X Factor sort of vibe he brings to the footy field, and obviously he couldn't get the job done. They've got a little hamstring tightness now, which will be quite disappointing for the Crows, but just what he's able to do, and a brilliant pickup he's been for the Crows. Him and Rochelle last year it was, now it's him and Dawson and him in the midfield that's just embarking on a brilliant journey for the Crows, but they're obviously a fair way off the top 8, and they'll need to make sure that it's not just Rankin, but all their players chipping in to make sure they do win games, which I do think they could. They might. They should be able to against the Eagles next round. We will get to those tips in a second, however. This game, the Giants and the Dogs, was a massive upset, I thought, in my opinion. But it wasn't just a massive upset, it was a massive victory for the Dogs. They managed to score 30 times, but they only kicked 8 goals, which was, look, it was good enough in the end, but you've got to make sure you capitalise in front of the big sticks. They won. They kept the Giants to 13 scores compared to 30, which is a mammoth effort. 6 goals, 7-43. The Giants to the Dogs 8, 22-70, which should have been more by the end of it. But the Dogs' defence, a massive tick. To keep them only to 13 shots was remarkable, and their midfield was brilliant, led by Treloar, 35 disposals. Their accuracy, not good for the Dogs, and that's obviously shown through the scoreboard. 8 goals, 22 is not good, but they got enough scores to register a victory. However, if you're versing a team who is accurate or had more chances, you would have lost the game. The Dogs won, but they should have won by a heap more, and obviously they know that. But there are good signs for the Dogs in all formats of the positions. You talk about the forward line, hitting the scoreboard, not accurately, but they're hitting the scoreboard. It's a good start rather than not. Treloar led the way. Their midfield's winning the clearances. The defence, Liam Jones, they're just doing everything they can, and they beat the Giants in NG Stadium, which is not easy to do. The Giants have sort of fallen off, which is quite surprising in my eyes. They were a brilliant team come the first 5, maybe 6 rounds, but now they've sort of dropped off, and we're starting to see, I guess, the real completed Giants, which isn't completed yet, which is something that they have to work on. Led by Kingsley's got to work something together and make sure that they do get back on the winners list sometime soon. And we move to the game that was a 119-point deficit in terms of the Lions' favour against the Tigers. It is amazing, and this is why I love the game of AFL, because it is amazing how quick a team can change. So the Richmond Tigers, they won in 2017. They made the prelim in 2018. They won 2019. They won 2020. And then forward track 4 years, and they've only got 1 win in the first 10 weeks, which is concerning. Obviously, it is concerning. And to lose to the Lions by 119 points is something you don't see every day. But credit to Brisbane. You know, Zorko tick, Neil tick, Dunkley tick, Danaher tick, everyone on the list a big fat tick because everyone did their job. Kai Lohmann, a rising star, 5 goals. Charlie Cameron, just a cheap little 5 goals as well for him. Another day at the office. Big O, he was good. I mean, everyone was good. I mean, when you win by 119 points, you're clearly doing something right. Chris Fagan has turned this side around. And I did like his comments about Adam Uze. He was very respectful. He said that he knows what he's going through. Obviously, Chris Fagan's been in the same position as Adam Uze at the moment, where you rock up to a club full of injuries. You rock up to a club depleted, and you got to turn it around. So I could not believe people are already saying get rid of Uze. Firstly, you got 20 plus injuries. You got a whole team out because of obviously muscle soreness, muscle tightness, groin, every injury under the sun these players have. So you can't expect to win games due to that. We talk about injuries and how important it is to keep your players fit and healthy. The Tigers haven't. But you can't just kick out a coach like that. He's just walking into the gates. You got to give him time. The Lions gave Chris Fagan time. They're starting to reap the rewards, and it's about getting a premiership. They nearly did last year. I think they'll go very close this year as well. But it's all about giving your coaches time. I hope the Dogs are giving Bevo time. I said last episode that you got to give him time. Look what happened. They beat the Giants, and now they're hopefully going to go on a roll and make sure they end up in the top 8 and moving forward, holding the silverware at the end of September as well in the future. So it's about giving your coaches time and making sure that your team can progress forward with some patience, because obviously nothing happens overnight. It's a work in progress. It's step by step, and the Tigers have to understand that. And it's so stressful for Adam Uze, who's just come into a club and depleted. I mean, he's got to receive some sort of recognition. He's trying his best. Obviously, if he wasn't, he'd be out of there already. But he's gonna try and turn this club around, and we'll see if he actually does. Port Adelaide and Hawthorn. What a game. What a turnaround this was for Port Adelaide. They won by a point with a second left. Darcy Byrne-Jones making sure that they get the 4 points. It wasn't good signs in terms of Wines with a heart problem. That was quite scary. He's had one before, I think 2021 or 2022. It was one of them. He had a heart problem and he's off, but he will be back, which is good. But the heart problem was a scare for him. Heaps of positives for Hawthorn, apart from the loss, was Hardwick getting 5 goals. Will Day as well, but Hardwick getting 5 goals was enormous. But then they put him back, and I'm thinking, well, if you got 5 goals, why put a bloke back? I don't get that. Anyway, Will Day, I did mention him just before. He was phenomenal. I think he had 27 touches, and they missed him, that's for sure, in the first few weeks, but they've got him now, and they're happy that they got him. And I think they will win next week, and we'll talk about that again in the tips. Jason Horne-Francis, big tick. Butters, big tick. But it was a scare for Port Adelaide. I thought they were going to lose with a terrible first quarter. Terrible few quarters, actually. That last quarter was the one that actually got them within a point, and then they obviously won by a point. So it was good that they got the victory in Port Adelaide, which was crucially important. They take on North Melbourne next week, which will obviously be a victory for them, you'd suspect, which will take them even further up the ladder. So they're in a good position, I think, Port, which is good for them. This last game that I'm going to review is the Eagles and the D's, and I had to review this game because, one, the Eagles got on top, probably not expected. It was in Perth, which is, well, it seems to be almost like a fortress for them this year, isn't it? Led by Harley Reid. I want to touch on this bloke quickly. Harley Reid, 19 years of age. He's taken the piss in this league. He's joking around. He's pushing off Norm Smith medalists. He's pushing off premiership players. And he's absolutely slaughtering them. He's put them off to the abattoir and said, bang, I'll cut you up and eat you for breakfast. This is what he's doing. It's what he's doing. He streams from the centre bounce. He takes a bounce or a couple. I think he took 3 bounces, actually. Launched from just within the 50-metre arc. A massive goal. A massive moment in the game. Again, next centre clearance. Push off Clayton Oliver. Push off Petrarca. These are 2 players that have brute strength, brute skill, and he's just taken the mickey out of them, and he sends it inside 50. I mean, I've never seen a player of his calibre or a player like him being more influential on a football club than Harley Reid has been. He's turned this club around on his shoulders. He's obviously by far the best player in their team, and there's no disputing the fact that that's true. As far as I can remember, I mean, this is just my opinion. I don't think there's ever been a player more influential than he has been. Or certainly not in recent history, that's for sure. You could go to Judd, but Harley Reid certainly is completely influential. he has changed this club, and people saying, oh, he's not going to like Western Australia, he wants to be home. Well, he looks like he's having a good time. He's smiling, he's laughing, he's taking the piss, he's kicking goals, he's getting the footy, he's winning games. It's all you can ask for. It's all you want. He's living the dream by the looks of things in Western Australia. Harley Reid, the biggest tick you could ever give him. And North supporters, they'll be crying because they don't have him when they should have had him if they lost last year. But they were in a position where if they lost, they'd be caught tanking. They were in a tricky decision whether to win or lose that game, and they won. Was it the right decision? Look back now, probably not. But, in the moment, you want to win games. You want to build a winning culture. But obviously, when you lose the first 10 games, you're not going too well. Jake Waterman leading the Coleman equal on 29 goals. Ridiculous what he's doing. He is reminding me of Nick Larkey from last year. Not a terrible team now. They're a team, a footy team with lack of skill, but also a lot of promise. But he's scoring every week 5 goals, 4 goals, 6 goals. Just a chunk of goals. And in the modern day of football, these are big bags of football in the modern day, and he's getting it week to week. So a massive tick for him. Eagles win by 35 points, and they find their 3rd win of the season. They are versing North Melbourne soonish in Perth as well, so they should be able to win that and find themselves on 16 points, which would be a mammoth turnaround from last year as well. Now, moving on from the recaps, that's all the games done. Tick, 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 tick. And this is something I want to focus on, the controversial comments made throughout the week. And this was just one of them, but I want to have a chat about this one. This was Kane Cornes on the... throughout the week, he mentioned about Cam Zurhaar and his thoughts on Jason Horne-Francis, and Cam Zurhaar saying how Cam Zurhaar is not loyal to the North Melbourne Football Club and how he shouldn't be having a dig at Jason Horne-Francis. Well, I do think Jason Horne-Francis and Cam Zurhaar are in a different position. They have a different scenario what they were going through. So Jason Horne-Francis arrived at the North Melbourne Football Club as a number 1 draft pick, so he... as a draft pick, you've got to stay at your club for 2 years. He stayed at the club for 1 year and decided to take off to Adelaide and spend life there, which was not on. Just wait another year like you're supposed to. He didn't do that. Whereas Zurhaar got picked from North Melbourne, stayed, and he's still here, and he's been here for years. He can do whatever he wants now. I think Kane Cornes, obviously, he played for Port. He goes for Port. He loves Port. He loves Jason Horne-Francis. He wants to protect the child. He wants to protect Jason Horne-Francis. But they're in 2 complete different scenarios. Jason Horne-Francis should have stayed for 2 years at North. If after the 2 years, I don't care what he does. He can take off. He can stay. As long as he was there for 2 years, then I can see what he's saying. But he left with 1 year, and I was thinking, you can't do that. You got to stay at your club like Zurhaar did. So I thought Kane Cornes was a little bit triggered, and I think he shouldn't have said what he said. I think Zurhaar can do whatever he wants now, but I think he will leave North Melbourne later on. He said he wants to go to a club that's winning games, and he has not registered a victory yet as of 2024. So he will take off, but I'm fine with that. He's done nothing wrong to the club at all. So controversial comments, Kane Cornes. He says a lot of unique things which can backfire also. This one might as well. So that's the controversial ones ticked off. Now for Jonesy's tips for this round coming up. Now it's the Dogs, who I think will win against Sydney and Marvel. This was a tough decision. It's a unique decision. It's a bold decision. And it's in Marvel. It is the only reason why I chose the Dogs. It's in Marvel. They beat the Giants, and they are probably the most inconsistent team in the competition, the Western Bulldogs. But I think after beating the Giants, I think they will be able to beat the Swans. It is a big decision, like a really big decision. You got a team who's first against the Dogs. I think the Dogs will win, which is... yeah, I just think the Dogs will win. They'll get up as well. They're a unique team who can lose to poor teams and beat good teams. It's just what they do, and I think they'll beat the Swans. I tipped the Pies against Freo in Optus. Obviously, the Pies, I think, are the ones to beat. Freo are not travelling too well at the moment. I think they'll lose to the Pies in Optus. North Melbourne and Port Adelaide in Blundstone Arena. Port Adelaide obviously will win. I don't think North Melbourne will beat any team in the league apart from Richmond and maybe West Coast, but they will not lose to Port Adelaide in Hobart. The Blues will win in Marvel Stadium. They've been terrific down there. I think they'll win that one. The Cats are versing the Giants in GMHBA. I think the Cats will win, surely because the Giants have fallen off drastically, but both teams searching for a win. The Cats losing their last 3 games. They need a victory. I think they'll get the victory in Geelong on Saturday afternoon. The Dons and the Tigers, dream time at the G. Obviously, the Dons will win that. The Tigers are not. They're barely getting 18 on the field at the moment with all their injuries, so I don't think the Dons will have too much trouble winning that. I did tip the Hawks against Melbourne at Marvel. I did tip them. I think them nearly beating Port is enough to get them over the line to beat Melbourne in Marvel. Not Melbourne, sorry, not Melbourne. Some team they're versing. The D's, I tipped against. I think they'll win that in the MCG. I know they lost to West Coast, but these things happen. They're going to win in Melbourne. They play well in Melbourne. They'll win in Melbourne. The Crows against the Eagles at the Adelaide Oval. I tipped the Crows. They play well in Adelaide. They'll win in Adelaide. So they're my tips for round 11. Controversial comments ticked off. Tips ticked off. Recap ticked off. I will provide some information for the future of this podcast. There is an interview coming up with I won't give it away, but there is an interview coming up with a special guest. Honoured to have this person on. And next episode, you will see this person who has achieved multiple things, highly regarded, amazing achievements that have just been brilliant in terms of what they've been able to achieve in sport. So happy to get them on, so excited to get the person on. This is episode 20 of the Sporting Fix. Have a good night.